Reducing the amount of dangerous nuclear materials in the world remains the official agenda of the two-day summit, but just how much will the unfolding crisis in Crimea dominate the talks, both officially and on the sidelines? For more on what we can expect from the summit, I'm joined by Stephen Fish, professor at the University of California-Berkeley. And Professor Fish, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
The G7 will be in attendance along with numerous other countries. Iran and North Korea will not be there. Russian President Vladimir Putin is sending his deputy foreign minister. How much progress can we actually expect from this meeting?
You know, it's possible that there could be some progress around the margins on some of the important issues that this group, in fact, has been addressing for recent years. I think, though, it will be dominated by talk about Crimea. Here, after all, we've got a great power. One of the world's two greatest nuclear powers, having just invaded a neighbor and annexed part of its territory. That's going to take center stage.
Okay. The head of NATO says that this huge buildup of Russian forces on the eastern border, he's calling it very worrisome. What are Putin's motives at this point, and how much damage has he already done to himself politically?
His motives at this point seem to be to want to keep the pressure up on Ukraine and keep the threat alive, even as he says that he has no designs on eastern Ukraine. I have to say, I think the damage to his reputation is already really considerable. Here is a guy who has at least pretended, pretty successfully, to play by the international rules, who's adhered to international norms ever since he's been in office. He's encouraged taking matters to the UN, multilateralism, respect for other countries' sovereignty. Recently, he's been acting more like George W. Bush, frankly, than he has like the old Vladimir Putin. I think a great deal of damage has already been done to his international reputation.
What about the sanctions? Does Putin himself know yet how damaging they will be?
It's hard to say whether he knows or not. I suspect he does not know. Right now, he's riding a crest of nationalist fervor. In Russia, this is a very popular action, but when I think the cost in political terms, in Russia's international reputational terms, and in economic terms begins to dawn on people over coming weeks and months and years, this action will actually end up buying him very little political capital in Russia. When it comes to the economic sanctions, I think these could get very embarrassing for President Putin and his inner circle. The United States government and some Western governments are already sanctioning, putting in place sanctions that would freeze or in another way somehow deal with the assets not only of Putin's inner circle, many of whom have made their ill-gotten billions from their connections with him, but of Putin himself. This could prove very embarrassing to President Putin.
Going back to, the actual purpose of the summit, originally, there had been a lot of talk and write-ups about Japan's plutonium stockpile and the fact that it was going to be possibly discussed at this in light of the Fukushima disaster. Will that even be on the agenda for as far as you know?
I certainly think it could be on the agenda. The question is how much progress can be made on issues like that with so many of the world leaders from the biggest powers concerned with the situation with Russia and with Crimea and Ukraine. I think that the chances for progress on important issues like that is probably greatly reduced by the fact that Russia and Crimea find themselves in the situation they now do.
Stephen Fish, professor at the University of California at Berkeley, thank you for your time and your insights.